Welcome back, Focus Fanatics. In this video, I'll be walking you through the features of our checklist screen. If you are in the front of the house, to access the checklist screen, all you have to do is click on the check label that's located on the top left-hand section of the check header. And when you click on it, you will see a list of checks and a bunch of other options that you can select. So the first column here will be the check number, and we have our check icon. All the icons across here do something when you click on them. When you click on this one, it will sort the checks by check number. The time the check was open is displayed in this column, and clicking this button will sort the checks by the time. This icon sorts or displays open and closed checks at the same time, or just open checks. You'll notice that the open checks have the green circle with the check mark, and the closed check have the red circles with the X's. The amount of check is in this column, and of course that can be sorted by clicking on it. The table number is in this column, and the last column is our employee over here, and of course you can sort it by employee. Alright, we'll look down at the bottom over here. You'll see the number of checks, the total, and the average amount of checks. Well, these values are based on what is currently displayed on the screen. So if you show your closed checks, these will change. Next options over here is the up arrow and the down arrow. Once you have lots of checks on the screen, you can use these arrows to scroll. Our next button over here is detail. If you want to actually view a check, you can click on detail and highlight one of the checks, and it will pull up the information about the check for you. Now if you want to go ahead and hit print, it will print this check for you. Now in the check viewer over here, if you select one of the menu items, it brings up a detail mode. It tells you what time the item was ordered, who ordered it, and of course it tells you what item was ordered. And if you hit print, it will print the detailed information out on the guest check. Now you can also drill down and click on the check header to see a little more information. For example, you can see the check number, the owner of the check, the date and time the check was open, the time it was closed, the time the check was reopened, the time the check was transferred, and who transferred it. You can see the table number and the number of guests, the order type, the closer of the check, the location, the station name that opened it, and the station that closed the check. So we go ahead, and so that wraps it up with all the features on our checklist screen. If you would like to filter out a list of checks that have certain parameters, that's where we go to find, and we can sort it out from there. So we'll click on Find. You'll see a bunch of options we can choose from. So we'll just start from the top. You'll see our date label over here. On a side note, the date label is italicized. That means we can click on it. In Focus, if a label is italicized, something usually happens when you click on it. In this case, when we click on it, it displays an end date. So essentially what this means is we can enter a starting date and an ending date, and this will pull up all the checks for that particular date range that we're looking for. We can look for a specific check number by typing in the check number over here, or we can simply click on the check icon and enter a check number if we would like. So now we can look for check 25. If we would like to look for checks from a specific employee, I'll just click on the employee label and select your employee that you want to look for. So now we will find all checks by Matt K. The next option, group of options we have here, simply all you have to do is check them. If we want to display checks that have been discounted, you click on the discounted like that. If you want to view all your voided checks, go ahead and hit your check mark. Same with transferred. All checks that have been transferred or have menu items that have been transferred will be displayed. If you want to see all your reopen checks, go ahead and select it. Now, reopen check is a check that has been closed out and the payment has been voided on there, so is no longer closed. Our next option is renumbered. Renumbered checks are checks that were open when it was processing closed day. Cancel checks are checks that were started but no items were ever sent with it. And a good example of a cancel check would be a waiter starting with table number 12 and then realizing, hey, this is actually supposed to be 13. He cancels everything and starts up a new table 13. Well, table 12 would show up as the canceled check. Payment pending is used for the credit cards that are waiting approval. Therefore, they're pending a payment on there. Missing tips will include checks that have payments that require tips, but the tips have not yet been entered. Missing beverage will show checks that have missing beverages on them. What I mean by that, menu items have a couple different options. You can have one of the options is require beverage, and another option is satisfy beverage. So if you have a check that has an item with the required beverage option, but it does not have a corresponding satisfies beverage option, that will show up as a missing beverage check. We can also display checks that have been reprinted. We can display checks that the credit card payment has been processed offline. And lastly, we can display checks that have a tax exemption placed on it. Okay, these four fields are a little bit different. If you would like to look at a specific checks with a specific menu item, you can just scroll down the list, and this will show all checks that have the Calamari menu item located on it. Same thing with payment. Let's say you want to see all checks that have a Visa payment on there. Now, tax ID. If you know a specific tax ID and you want to search all checks that have that tax ID on there, you can highlight it, and if you don't have a keyboard, you can simply click on this keyboard and type the tax ID, and that will find all checks that have the tax ID of 1234. Now, the payment account is really helpful for when you have credit card payments. Let's say somebody said, hey, I was in there last Wednesday, I don't have my receipt, but I think I was overcharged for my bill. And so what you could say is, hey, just give me the last 4 digits of your credit card and I can find the check for you. So we'll go over here and we can just enter the last 4 digits of the credit card and hit OK, and it will find the check with the last 4 digits matching what we enter here. So that's all the parameters we have here. Now what we can do with the filter, we can set up check filters that essentially saves all the options on here, and then we can click it with one touch of a button, process it with one touch of a button. And if you'd like to check out our YouTube video, do a search for check filters, and it'll show you how to set up the corresponding check filter. So if you click on it, you can see we have little buttons over here. Our video, it talks about the bartender voided checks. So what this is says, hey, we want to search for checks that have been voided, that has a cash payment, and that has been reopened. So this check filter will only display checks that meet all 3 of those criteria. So just show you actually how this stuff works now. Okay, you see we have a bunch of checks on the screen. So we'll click on Find, and we just want to find checks that have been voided. Okay, it pulls up our checks. We happen to have 3 of them. Okay, it's pretty cut and dry. We can do the same thing for any of the other stuff over here. The last thing I'll show you is our check filter. We'll go ahead and find our bartender voided checks. And we highlight it. And this is you can see it is our 2 items have been voided. Let's get back into our regular check viewer. Hit detail, go over here. Now you can see our items have been voided. The cash payment has been voided and closed out the cash. So this leads me to believe there's a good chance the bartender probably, if he didn't make a mistake, he's pocketed the $8. So that wraps it up for our checklist feature. And until next time, Fanatics, stay focused.